Today, I'm serving up a morbid morsel, a bite-sized curiosity plucked from the shadowy corners of history. Short, strange, and just unsettling enough to stick in your teeth. The street is quiet now. It's just past midnight in Mobile, Alabama. March 1981. The air smells like salt water and magnolia, the way it always does this close to the bay. A young man walks alone. He's 19. He's been at his sister's house watching basketball. He offered to make a cigarette run for his niece. Just a quick walk to the corner store and back. He told his family he'd be right home. He has no idea he's already been chosen. Two men in a car have been driving for hours. They aren't looking for him specifically. They're looking for someone. Any black man they can find. They pull alongside him. A gun appears. He's forced into the car. And somewhere, across town, a cross is burning on the steps of the courthouse. His name is Michael Donald. He will never make it home. One of the last documented lynchings in America. This is 1981, not 1881, not 1931. The year Michael Donald, a 19-year-old black man from Mobile, Alabama, was beaten, killed, and hung from a tree by members of the Ku Klux Klan. He wasn't accused of a crime. He wasn't suspected of anything. He was randomly selected in retaliation for an interracial jury failing to convict a black man for killing a white policeman. Let that land. A man died because 12 strangers in a courtroom couldn't reach a verdict. The night it happened, Michael spent his last night alive with his family, watching a basketball game. His niece asked for cigarettes. Michael said he'd walk up and get them. That errand cost him his life. Henry Hayes, 26 years old, the exalted Cyclops of the local United Klans of America chapter, and James Tiger Knowles, just 17, drove around Mobile looking for a black person to attack. They had a gun. They had a rope. They found Michael. He was beaten. His throat was cut. His body was hanged from a tree on a residential street, directly across from the home of the second highest-ranking Klansman in Alabama. On the same night, other Klan members burned a cross on the lawn of the Mobile County Courthouse. It was a message, delivered in broad daylight, not in some backwoods rural town, but in a city. In 1981. The cover-up that wasn't. Mobile police initially concluded the death was drug-related. Tests showed no trace of drugs in Michael's body. His family insisted he had never been involved in drug activity. Beulah Mae Donald, his mother, knew exactly what had happened. She said so immediately. She contacted civil rights activist Jesse Jackson, who organized a protest march in Mobile and demanded answers from the police. The community marched. They demanded the truth and eventually, the FBI came. The confession. It took years, but the mystery unraveled, giving birth to the ugly truth. Thomas Figures, the assistant U.S. attorney in Mobile, persuaded the FBI to investigate. Agent James Bodman was sent to Mobile, and it didn't take long to persuade James Knowles to confess. Knowles gave up everything. He named Henry Hayes. He described the night in lurid detail. He testified against his own Klan brother. Knowles was sentenced to life in prison for violating Michael's civil rights. Hayes was sentenced to death, the first time since 1913 that a white man had received a death sentence for killing a black man in Alabama. 2 men convicted. Justice served, some said. Beulah Mae Donald? Well, she disagreed. Greetings, dear listener. I'm so glad you're here. There's something that I probably should have emphasized before now, but I guess it's better late than never. Maybe you've caught on to the fact that I open each and every episode of the Morbid History Podcast with a historical fiction retelling for whatever you're about to hear. This podcast is not my only venture. I'm also a horror author. I've written 2 novels, 2 novellas, numerous short story collections, and I've even had a few short stories published in anthologies. I thought that opening each podcast episode with a bit of my writing would be a nice personal touch, and also give you, a member of my beloved audience, the opportunity to hear some short fiction. With all that said, I've got a short story collection series titled Stories with Horror and Heart. I'm releasing the 4th volume on April 8th, 2026. If you're listening to this before that date, you can head on over to Amazon and pre-order it. If the time you're hearing this is after the release date, you can snag an ebook for only $1.99, or download it free if you've got a Kindle Unlimited subscription. Volumes 1 through 3, plus all of my other books, can be found there too. The longer works are also available in paperback print, and my last novella, The Potted Plant, is also on Audible, narrated by yours truly. So, if you're into horror fiction with scares in the vein of Stephen King and Clive Barker, but also the emotional depth of Mike Flanagan, then give my writing a try. And if you leave a review, whether it's Amazon, Goodreads, or on social media, be sure to mention the Morbid History Podcast, so I can know where you came from. And now, back to the show. Mama wasn't finished. The men who killed her son were behind bars, but the organization that ordered it was still operating, still holding meetings, still burning crosses. In 1984, Beulah Mae got in contact with Morris Dees, a civil rights attorney who co-founded the Southern Poverty Law Center. Dees believed the murderers had been acting on institutional policy, that the KKK itself bore responsibility for Michael's death. They filed a civil lawsuit against the United Klans of America. Not the men who swung the rope, the organization that tied the knot. The trial. The suit was built on what lawyers call agency theory, the idea that an organization is responsible for the actions of its members when those members are acting on the organization's principles. Donald's attorneys attempted to prove that Michael's death was not only the result of a conspiracy between the Mobile Klansmen, but of their acting upon the UKA's violent policies through a semi-military chain of command. The evidence was damning. Dees produced a copy of Fiery Cross, a Klan magazine that contained a caricature of a lynched black man, with the caption that, quote, "All whites should work to give the blacks what they deserve," unquote. When UKA Imperial Wizard Robert Shelton described the drawing as a mistake by a local editor, Dees made him read the masthead, which listed Shelton as both editor and publisher. Shelton admitted he had not retracted the cartoon in the next issue. And then James Knowles took the stand. He testified against the organization he once swore loyalty to. He described the chain of command. He described the night Michael died in full detail, while Beulah Mae sat a few feet away and wept quietly. When Knowles finished, he turned to her and asked for forgiveness. She looked at him and said, "Son, I forgave you a long time ago." The verdict. In February 1987, an all-white jury awarded Beulah Mae Donald a $7 million judgment against the United Klans of America. $7 million the Klan didn't have. They were forced to turn over the deed to the UKA's 7,000 square foot national headquarters building in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, valued at around $225,000. That building was the entire organization's most valuable asset. Beulah Mae sold the building and used the money to buy her first home, moving out of public housing for the first time in her life. She had raised her children in that housing project as a single mother. Now, she owned a house. But as great as that was, it was all dampened by the truth that it had cost her a son. What the verdict destroyed. The UKA didn't just lose a building. The verdict marked the end of the United Klans of America, the same organization that had beaten the Freedom Riders in 1961, murdered civil rights worker Viola Liuzzo in 1965, and bombed Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963. One epic lawsuit, one brave mother, and the nasty yet influential UKA went up in smoke. Plus, the precedent she set didn't stop there. The agency theory used in her case became the legal foundation for future civil suits against hate groups across the country, a template for dismantling violent organizations that hid behind the actions of individual members. The ending she deserved. Beulah Mae Donald was named Miss Magazine's Woman of the Year for 1987. When asked about the $7 million judgment, she said, "I wanted to know who all really killed my child. I wasn't even thinking about the money. If I hadn't gotten a cent, it wouldn't have mattered." She died in 1988, just over a year after the verdict. Her attorney, Michael Figures, said, "She was the rock on which the entire challenge to the Klan was ultimately built. She never backed out. She just stayed there." In 2006, the street where Michael's body had been found was renamed Michael Donald Avenue in his honor. The Klan hung him on that street, and in their desire to snuff out his life and memory, they managed to sign their institution's own death warrant, while giving opportunity for Michael Donald's name to live on. Michael Donald was 19 years old. He was studying to be a brick mason. He worked in a mailroom. He watched basketball with his family on Friday nights. He went for cigarettes and never came back. The men who killed him were convicted, but Beulah Mae Donald understood something that the criminal courts couldn't address. Individual punishment doesn't kill an institution. Money does. She didn't have power. She didn't have much influence. She had grief. She had that certain Southern brand of stubbornness. And she had the clarity to understand that hatred has a headquarters, and that headquarters has a deed. She took it because she believed in justice, not just for her son, but every other black person whose lives had been negatively impacted by the United Klans of America. History doesn't always give us clean endings, but sometimes, just sometimes, it gives us a mother who refuses to stop. And that, dear listeners, wraps up this Morbid Morsel. I'm your host, Thomas Gloom, and as you digest this nasty little treat, I know your hunger will once again grow. And when it does, I'll be back with more history for you to sink your teeth into. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. And to stay up to date with all the morbid history happenings, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Morbid History Pod. Be on the lookout for the next full-length episode of Morbid History in 2 weeks' time. Until then, share this episode with some friends and stay curious. What a badass mama she was.